Once I walked to my mom and I told her, "Mommy, I'd like to major in political science so that I may be able to work towards cleaning up the mess in the world." "That's really nice of you," she answered. "Then would you please go upstairs and get started with your room?" How many of you have ever had the experience with that typical grouchy old lady on the bus? I think we all know about the difference between her generation and ours. There are even great philosophers who've created deep philosophical phrases, sentences, like "back in my time it was different." Or we also know about the story of the grandfather who's telling to his 18-year-old grandson that at his age he'd already been 25. Now, I'd like to analyze this situation a bit so that we may get towards my point. First of all, this generation, these people of age 60 and above, were born back in the 50s. In the 50s. And let me underline it. During the decade when the world was ruled by Elvis Presley, when men started having long hair, and when ladies and girls started wearing pants and jeans. Or we, as Hungarians, can proudly take the example of the freedom fighters of 1956 and of the story, what happened on the other side of these windows on the streets of Budapest. This group of youngsters, of teenagers, was brave enough and was fired up enough to stand up against a superpower. This was one of the few moments of the history of the Russian army when it could have ever been stopped. And back then, it was not done by huge armed forces, but by a group of young teenagers. What do we see today? This back the new generation is somewhat against us and somewhat blaming us. But are we really that bad? I don't think so. The reason we are young is that we should renew our world. We should bring fresh air to our environment and to our society. There is an expression that I take from Latin. It's magis. In English, it means more. Those who apply this idea of magis into their daily life try to act better, to do more, and to constantly try to better themselves. Day in, day out. I truly love this wonderful idea of magis because it means a competition not against others, not a constant fighting, but it means that you should always try to be better than your own. How amazing would it be if everybody knew this and could apply this into their lives? Now, I guess some of you might think that I am naive. But let me make it clear, I am not naive. For those of you, I propose to imagine a world of streets full of empty people, a world which lacks creativity, innovations, and motivation, a world which simply lacks life and spirit, a world which is gray and boring. I don't want to live in such a world. None of us would like to live in such a world. But let me tell you which sort of world I like to live in. I like to live in a world which is full of motivation, creativity, and colors. I like to live in a world which is simply full of life and spirit. I like to live in a world where the streets are full of people, full of spirit, where being a youngster is not a disadvantage, but a powerful potential. That's the kind of world I like to live in, and that's the kind of world we should start building here and now. If it's not us, then who? If it's not now, then when? As a conclusion, I'd like to give you a piece of advice. Next time, when you hear anybody quoting the deep philosophical sentence, "back in my time it was different," all you should do is to give it a thought for just a fraction of a second and then keep moving on. But what you should never do is to lose your motivation, because our motivation is our powerful potential. Or even if you would, because you might, you can take power from the strong examples of the freedom fighters of 1956 or the youth of 89. Because we are here to renew our world and to bring fresh air to our society. Thank you for your attention.